So I'm an occupational therapist and have worked with children for 30 years in school, mainly school settings. About 20 years ago, I started really noticing a difference with children that I was working with. Previously, I just worked with children that had disabilities, and suddenly I'm seeing children that are having tantrums and huge behavior issues, and I'm seeing developmental delays, and I'm seeing mental illness, I'm seeing depression and anxiety in little children, and I really started wondering what was going on. I was also seeing a rise in autism, ADHD, and in particular the ADHD children. I just started asking the question, how much TV and video games at this time, that's all we had, were you using? And started drawing a correlation way back then. So I started bringing this up in meetings with the parents, in our education planning meetings, bringing it up with the teachers, and looking to the research, and found a considerable amount of research drawing connections between all of these issues I was seeing and technology overuse. So at that point, I stepped away from the school system, collated research, wrote my first book called Virtual Child, and have started doing workshops. And so at this point, I do workshops all over the world, but as well work in our First Nations communities in Canada in launching programs to raise awareness around the impact of technology on children, and develop programs to help create more of a balance between technology and healthy activity. So this is not, my talk is not about getting rid of tech, reducing the amount of tech children are using. It's really about increasing healthy activity. So, and I know in Iceland, you're very big on that, and I've read about your youth in Iceland initiatives. It's really awesome to see that. So if we increase healthy activity, automatically our tech use goes down. So I have spoken for years to parents and teachers and government, and when I talk about reducing tech, it's like, don't want to hear it, right? When I talk about balancing and increasing of the activity, there's more of an interest. So this is something that I've noted, and now that's where I speak to. So today I want to talk about how much are kids using. Unfortunately, I will be presenting predominantly North American statistics. I was not able to find even this statistic, like how much are children using in Iceland. So I apologize for that, but predominantly I'll be presenting what's going on in North America, and hopefully you can look at how horrible it is actually in North America, and be excited about, doing some things in Iceland. So also I'll be presenting what are the experts saying for guidelines regarding how much should children be using. I want to then talk about 4 critical factors for child development and learning and behavior. And again, once you know those, you can see how... Should I answer? It's Catherine Steiner. Should I answer? Or should I push the red phone? Push the red phone? Okay. She'll go away. I'm sorry. Okay. Let's turn that off, eh? So we're going to talk about the 4 critical factors for children. And then I'm going to go into the research and briefly talk about the physical, social, emotional, and cognitive impact of tech on those domains, on those 4 child domains. And then we'll talk about some strategies. So I think we're going to have a break and talk about some strategies. I present a lot of research on the slides, and I am not going to talk about all the research. What I want to point you to is that on my website, which is Zone-NCA, there's a fact sheet, and on the fact sheet is like 350 research references that are all organized by topic. And so when I talk about a researcher, if you want to find that particular research, go to my website, and there's direct links to the research. So there's so much research, and I'm going to present this much, right? Please note that there is a lot of data out there in this area, but the media, unfortunately, I don't think is doing a very good job on presenting this to parents, because what I find when I work with parents and teachers, they don't know a lot of this information, and when I give them the information, they get excited about doing something. So if each one of you go away and talk to 5 people, right? If there's 100 people here, we've reached 500 people. We really have to spread the word and talk more about this. So again, it's about balancing tech with critical factors for growth and success. And those 4 critical factors are: children need to move a lot. They need to touch and be touched. The tactile system is absolutely huge for helping children feel calm and relaxed and lowering anxiety. They need human connection. We know this: if we do not connect as humans, we will die. This is an essential biological need, and they need to be out in nature. So I pose the question always to everyone at the beginning of my workshops: are the ways in which we're raising and educating our children with technology, are they sustainable? Are we creating a child who's going to grow up and they're going to be happy and they're going to produce progeny for you and make you a grandparent? Are they going to get a job? Are they going to have healthy relationships? And this is something that we really need to be thinking about. We need to look at the whole picture of the child, and are we creating a sustainable future for these children with the existing use of technology? So how much are children using? So our 0 to 2s, about 2.5 hours a day of TV. Our toddlers, 4.5. Our children, 6 to 12, are using 7.5. And our teens, 9 hours a day. So this is a combination of US and Canadian studies. So that's a lot of use. And when I say technology, this is a combination of different types of technology. So basically it's screens. It does not include audio music. This is screen-based technology. So we've got our TVs, we've got our computers, we've got our tablets, our cell phones, and that's generally what they're using. This does not include actually education technology either, nor does it include passive watching, which is when a child's just sitting there and the TV's on all day. 75% of our households have the TV on all the time, all day. So that's very disturbing to kids' visual and auditory systems. Now, when handhelds came in, so 2010, we got our iPhones, our iPads, and the derivations off that. And the Common Sense Media did a survey. Now, this is not a research study, but it's just a survey, and found that the usage rates shot up dramatically, up to 40%. Also, we saw usage with infants. So this is something that we didn't see before the handhelds. Now, we're seeing infants and very young children using these devices. So what are the American Academy of Pediatrics, Canadian Pediatric Society, the Australian Pediatric Societies recommending? Nothing for 0 to 2s, and I'll explain why when I talk about brain development. The 2 to 5s, an hour a day, and then the older kids, no more than 2 hours per day. So that's, again, they're speaking about all technology, all screen-based technology. And the Americans, started this recommendation in 2002. They reissued the recommendation in 2013, 2015, 2016. They just came out with some very specific information on video games in kids. So this is something that I look to the pediatric community, these societies, as the experts in this area of screen-based technology. They collate all the research. So I really think we need to be seeing here that our kids are using about 4 times the amount that the experts are recommending, right? And they keep recommending these things. So projections, if here's a 7-year-old who's using the 7.5 hours a day, just quantified up, like by 18 years, they're gonna have like 3 years of tech on board, 24/7. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will have logged 3 years. By the time they're 80, it's like almost 17 years. So I show this slide to kids because I say, do you want to be lying there, you know, in the hospital bed when you're 80 years old and think back and go, wow, I spent 17 years playing video games, you know? Or would you rather do something else with your time? So what are these 4 critical factors for child development, behavior, and learning? This is to let you know I've got these cards up here if somebody wants to get a copy of this. So I'm an occupational therapist, so my 4 critical factors might be different than a psychologist's or a physician's critical factors, but for me, I look at development of the brain and the body, and this is what children need. So they need to move a lot. They need to touch and be touched. Movement stimulates 2 different systems, the vestibular and the proprioceptive systems, to build strong core and motor coordination. The tactile system and the human connection systems activate our attachment, our tactile processing, and that helps children to feel really secure and calm. When we see a lot of anxiety, which Sven sent me a study that in your young girls, anxiety's gone like from 7 to 17% since 2012. So it's important to look at when something's going like this, really rapidly, because we need to do something when we see those kind of statistics, right? Anxiety is very, in girls especially, very linked to social media. You know, because they're like, you know, I texted you, why didn't you text me back? You said you were going to go to the party and then you were going to text me and then you didn't, and oh my gosh, and you know, somebody said something about me on Facebook and they don't like me. I posted 3 pictures, you didn't like my pictures. Very, very upset our young women today, and they're also very image focused. Developmentally, that's what they should be, but they're getting very caught up in their image and the image they're presenting. So we're seeing lots of problems with our young women today. Nature activates the parasympathetic system to calm the child. Nature is very soothing to the brain. I see nature as counterbalancing technology. We need to get our kids outside more, and I think you're doing some great work with your Youth in Ireland initiatives. So these are the things that create a sustainable child. They create a child who has optimal development, learning, and is able to go out in the world and make their mark. So I want to go through those 4 factors briefly and just expand a bit. So movement, what happens when we're raising a sedentary child? What happens when we have a child who doesn't move? And when you hand a child a device, they sit. You take it away, they get up, they move around, right? So whether you're in a school setting, daycare, preschool, home, community, when we give a kid a device, it's detrimental to their development. We have to understand that whenever we use a device, it's detrimental to their development. So why is movement so important? We know the cardiovascular effects of movement, prevents obesity, diabetes, prevents early heart attack, early stroke, but also it builds a strong core. So whenever we move off our center, there's a system called the vestibular system that says, hey, you need to come back to center, and it builds core. So think of children on a swing, on a merry-go-round, on a slide, on a bike. They're moving off their center, and that system says, come back to core. From core comes motor coordination of both sides of the body, eye to hand for printing, eye to eye for reading. So coordination is secondary to core. I see so many children that are so unfit and so lacking in core. So I see children who are literally collapsed. We call them low tone kids. Drooling, not being able to speak. All these things come from not having good, strong core. So children need to move lots. The other things, there's so much research now showing movement is really good for attention and learning. So lots of movement breaks. And I will get you, when I see you start to go to sleep, I will get you up. We are going to do some things to make sure you can pay attention and learn. And as well, we know, we all know for ourselves, when we're fit, our mental health is good, right? When we're not out of shape, we're not. Touch lowers adrenaline. When we hug our children, when we hug each other, when we even reach out and just put a hand on our child or each other, it actually activates the parasympathetic system to lower adrenaline, cortisol. So touch is essential. We used to touch our babies 95% of their lives. In the 0 to the first year of life, we used to hold our babies. We'd pack our babies on our bodies, right? Now in North America, it's down to 30%. We're carrying babies in, I call them like suitcases. You know, we're treating our children like luggage. We carry them in these little bucket seats. We strap iPads. This is Fisher-Price has made iPad mounts for potty chairs, for strollers, for bucket seats. And when we stick a screen in front of the baby, it prevents that baby from forming attachment to the parents. So we're prohibiting touch, we're prohibiting human connection. And we know the touch, like human connection, is a biological need. We know from our orphanage studies, without touch, children will die. And yet we are not touching our children enough. Human connection, the third critical factor, human connection is the origin of mental health. So when we see children who are depressed, children who are anxious, children with ADHD, children with autism, we want to connect to those children. We don't want to disconnect from those children. It's very important. Tech isolates children from each other, from their parents. We are pack animals. We know that we don't survive outside of the pack. So if you are a family and we take you and put you over here, you're not going to do well, right? Yet, you know, we all walk home at night with our devices. We eat dinner on our devices. We drive in the car. The kids are on the devices. The parent, you know, is texting. Texting is now more dangerous than driving drunk. More people are being killed from texting than drunk driving in Canada. Actually, that's a British Columbia study where I'm from. So in North America, 1 in 6 children now have a diagnosed mental illness. This 30 years ago, I can tell you I didn't have one child on my caseload that had a diagnosis, not one. Further on, I had my first child with autism about 20 years ago, right? These are new disorders. And the studies have shown it's not because we didn't know about the disorders and we were ignorant in diagnosing these children. We're assigning adult disorders to children when we look at depression, anxiety, even ADHD. So autism, the studies are now showing a link between screens and autism, as well as with ADHD. Autism's more serious in the sense it's a far more permanent and disabling disorder. So what the studies have found is that between the age of 9 months and 18 months, it's a critical period for socialization. So if an infant, I always pick on people closest to me, so I'm going to pick on you. You're my baby, or let's say I'm a baby and you're my mom. So I'm going to go and you smile back, right? And I go, and you go, this is a reciprocal connection that we're forming. This is attachment. It's an energetic connection that we have. Okay, now I'm put in front of a screen. And so I go, and the screen does not respond, right? And I go, and the screen does not respond. So I just go, oh, okay. So this critical period means the child has to have human connection, not screens, during this very, very important time. I want to show you, so autism now is 1 in 65 in the US and Canada. An MIT professor, brilliant woman, thought, let's do the projections. Let's look at the rate of which autism is increasing and see what it's going to be like in 2025. She projected 1 in 2 males and 1 in 5 females. If we continue to escalate at the rate that we're going. Autism's been termed epidemic now in North America. And yet there is very little. I was just speaking with Ingrid, who works with a child with autism, and she said that on the screening tools and the assessment tools, not once do they ask, do you use screens, or how much screens do you use? Yet, this is really epic. I want to show you this video clip, and it's called the Still Face Experiment. Many of you might have seen it. It's being replicated now by a colleague I work with, Julie Radisky, with a cell phone. So just imagine, instead of the mom going still face, the mom will have a cell phone.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
I'm here.
So that's harsh to watch, but you've all seen it in restaurants, and many times the parent then, is like, well, I've got to look at my cell phone, so here's the iPad, here, you do the cell phone, I'll do the iPad. Children that age are learning social modeling. They're modeling after the parent. So if parents have the phone in their face, the little kids are like, well, they're not available, so I guess I'll look at that screen. That's what I'm supposed to do, right? Isn't that what I'm supposed to do, is look at a screen, right? So this is very dangerous when we have a child preferring a screen to a parent. Our fourth critical factor is nature. With the onset of all these devices, we have just become very sedentary and very inside people. So we used to spend 95% of our time, sorry, I'm getting my statistics wrong. We used to spend about 5% of our time outside, and now it's down to like 2%. Just over the last decade, we've become more inside people, right? And parents, the studies are showing parents who keep their children inside are viewing the world as unsafe. The media has made it, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't read. You hear if somebody gets abducted or horribly, treated a child. We hear about it all across the world, and we hear about it maybe 10 or 15 times a day based on how much we use screen media. And so fear is endemic now in parents. Fear-based parenting is very, very problematic because it's keeping our kids inside. We know so much now about nature. Again, it's soothing, activates the parasympathetic system to calm the child. Brilliant studies going on in the US on the use of green space, which is outdoor space, for children with ADHD. So a study found that children in rural centers had a third less ADHD than children in cities, in urban centers. And so they went about to look at why is that, and they found that it was actually access to green space. And then they went on to quantify how much green space would restore attention for children, only 20 minutes a day. So why do we medicate children when we know that movement, nature is going to help them? So the research. So I've talked about the importance of movement, touch, connection, nature. We want to increase those first. That's the first thing you do when you go home. You have a family meeting, and then you figure out how are we going to do more of those things. And I'll get to that at the very end. I'll give you tons of ideas of how you're going to do more of that. Whether you're in a home, a school, daycare, preschool, or community setting, we need to do more of that because of what I'm going to present now. So this is just a very small portion of tons and tons of studies. But as an occupational therapist, I'm going to talk about physically what's going on, socially, emotionally or mentally, and cognitively or in our academic realm. So one of the things that's really important to know is that we are reaching epidemic proportions in a number of areas with children. Children have never been sicker than they are today, ever. And we have normed that. We have said, well, it's normal for a 7-year-old to have tantrums, isn't it? Isn't it normal, for children to walk around like this, to not be able to sit up straight? Isn't it normal for children to need a device when they have dinner with their family? And we've sort of shifted into this different area where we're not noticing that this is not normal. From my perspective, after 30 years, this is not normal what I'm seeing in schools today. So in Canada, this is a British Columbia study, 1 in 3 children are entering the school system developmentally delayed. Anyone here in preschool daycare settings has to take a look at that and go, okay, we really need to have a big message here, home to parents, around getting kids moving more and looking more at pre-literacy skills because they're not doing well by the time they enter school. A third of our kids don't have articulate speech. They're not able to talk in an understandable way. So again, speech is a muscle. These are all muscles. If you don't use them, you're going to lose them, right? Or not develop them. Obesity, depression, anxiety, there's your statistic for your young girls of 1 in 6. Young girls have anxiety when it was only 7%, only 4 years ago. Suicide, autism, ADHD, sleep deprivation has now been termed epidemic in Canada for children and adults. We stay up late at night watching these friggin' series that go on and on and on, and they're very interesting. But it's not good for our work or for our ability to parent. Learning disabilities. It's astonishing in the schools how many children, now 1 in 3 children in Canada, in British Columbia, I should say, just to be specific. This is information from our Teachers Federation. 1 in 3 are on what we call an IEP, which is a learning plan. They need specific types of instruction to help them. So Obesity, Iceland isn't on here, but what I want you to just look at is trends. We are having trends that are going the wrong way, right? So this is just obesity, but we could put developmental delay up there, we could put mental illness up there. We need to look at how rapidly these things are increasing and start to really wake up and do something about it. So physically, I'm going to go through the physical, social, emotional, and cognitive realms. Physically, tech is a restraint. You're restraining that child from moving. The body is meant to move. The brain likes movement. And when we hand it a device, it's not moving, right? So just a little bit about brain development. This shows a 5-year-old brain and a 20-year-old brain. The green is plasticity, or a brain that is rapidly developing. And we can do a lot with that brain before it reaches age 20. You can look at age 12. The brain is kind of half green, half blue. Blue is hardwired. So blue is a brain that's going to be harder to make changes to, right? So there's two processes that are important to understand. Is the brain develops in relation to the environment. So if the environment has lots of movement, touch, connection, nature, we are going to see a proliferation of neurons and a very diverse development. If we have a brain and body that just does a lot of tech, then we are going to see a very small area of the brain that develops. So two processes that happen during brain development is proliferation of neurons and pruning of neurons. So when the baby is born and we look at the neurons in their brain, they are all there. It's like a road map of Iceland. Look at all the roads, right? There's roads everywhere, and they are all there when the baby's born. Now, when the child reaches 80 and dies, or 90, 2/3 of those neurons will be pruned. So the brain likes to be efficient. And so what the brain says is, hey, we're not using all those roads. We're just going to cut them. We're going to prune them. So the pruning that happens is related to the environment. So the second process, proliferation, is connections formed between the neurons called synapses that connect the different neurons. That is a very rapid process that happens. A lot of it happens between 0 to 2. By age 3, almost all those synaptic connections have formed. Now they continue to form, you can see, until around age 20, 25. But after that, it's much, much harder. So when we look at things like tech addiction, which is now 1 in 11 in the US, that's a study by Douglas Gentile, those kids, it's way better to get to them before they're age 12, right? So what we do, we should have a lot of respect for our 0 to 2s, 0 to 3s, and for their brains and their bodies, and no tech, right? That's what the experts recommend, no tech 0 to 2. And then when we start introducing tech, we want to be very, very careful and understand that that brain is developing. And yes, after age 2, a little bit of tech's okay, not a lot, not at the levels, that we're doing that, right? So we really want to respect the early years and introduce tech later, rather than earlier, right? So this slide pretty much talks about what I've just discussed. I forgot to mention, I am going to be giving this slideshow to Sven along with something called a tech toolkit, and he's going to post that on Facebook as well as on your website. Yes, on the website. So don't think that I'm rushing through these slides and you have to memorize all of this, right? So the one thing that I haven't discussed is what they've been finding is kids who use over a couple hours a day, especially of fast-paced media, video games, are actually pruning tracks to frontal lobes. So what the studies are showing are increased atrophy in one of these last studies was 11 different areas in the frontal cortex from fast-paced media, of kids who use fast-paced media. So again, here's this pruning happening. We don't need frontal lobes for video games. We don't need frontal lobes for cartoons or TV. It's pretty much just entertainment. Entertainment doesn't do anything for the brain, right? So we don't want to lose our frontal lobes. We have evolved as humans to use our frontal lobes. Lower life forms don't use their frontal lobes, right? We don't want to de-evolve. We want to evolve, right? So it's very, very crucial that at the younger years we control how much tech our kids are getting. Sleep. When I started looking at the National Sleep Foundation studies, I was astounded at the impact of sleep deprivation on multiple body functions. I thought, oh, well, it's just attention, learning, productivity, but actually increased heart attack. We need sleep, and we need to be following our sleep guidelines. In all my reports I do for children, I include the Canadian Foundation for Sleep's guidelines, so that the parents understand the importance of sleep. When children are using these devices, because it's fast-paced, because it's really exciting, very immersive, their heart rate goes up, their blood pressure goes up. They go into a sympathetic charged state, fright, flight, or fight. So they've shown this with EMGs. I'm actually going to show a video on my next slide of a kid gaming with blood pressure cuff and pulsimeter on. It's not good to have your heart going like really fast for long periods, especially if you're a young child, right? So this is something that that we're really at infancy on regarding research. Is I keep asking some of the people in the medical team that I work with, can't someone just do a study, just go into a school and replicate the study I'm going to show you with a 22-year-old, do that with children? Because I'm very curious, the younger the child is, do their heart rate and blood pressure go up less? Do they go up more? Is it more damaging? We just don't know that. 8 minutes left? Okay. So here we go.
The game we have for Kenneth today is a fighting game, and we've shown in past research that the violent video games tend to cause a little bit more of an increase in physiological arousal, like blood pressure and also hormones in your body, like adrenaline. We're going to monitor Kenneth with a portable heart rate, blood pressure, and EKG monitor. Kenneth's blood pressure is very normal for a man his age, 22-year-old male. So 140/69, just as we're about to start playing the game. So Kenneth's getting excited, anticipating playing, and it's actually the anticipation of the event that causes more physiological arousal sometimes than the actual event. At this point, Kenneth's heart rate started about 85 beats per minute. Once he's about 3 minutes in, with the 3 to 5 minute mark right now, his heart rate's already gone up to 120 beats per minute. It's about a 40% or so increase in heart rate. Even though heart rate and blood pressure may go up at you, like you might see with exercise, it's different from exercise. This would be considered a behavioral stressor. This is at the 20-minute mark now. At this point, you can see his blood pressure has gone up to 155/77, which would be considered hypertension. One thing we see with people who are addicted is that over time, they need to play more and more in order to achieve the same amount of arousal. So Kenneth's been playing about 30 minutes at this point. His blood pressure during the last round maxed out at 190/144. Now, that's significant hypertension. I would be a little concerned having physiological arousal as significant as what we saw with Kenneth today.
So the other process that's going on there is adrenaline's up, cortisol after long-term usage, but the brain's releasing a chemical called dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter, and it kind of makes you go feel like this. Whoa! It's not like an endorphin, it's different. And kids get hooked on that feeling, right? They like feeling like that. They like feeling jazzed up. But what happens is the body dampens that effect over time because the body is smart. It goes, we can't be in these supercharged sympathetic states. So it starts to dampen it. So they don't get the rush. They don't get the dopamine and the adrenaline are lowered. And so they need more. So that's why your kid goes, other kids get to do 2 hours. Why do I can only do an hour, right? Because they're habituating to that and they're needing more. So vision, myopia, nearsightedness is up. When we look at a 2-dimensional fixed distance screen for long periods, our eyes are not liking it. I heard someone mention virtual reality. Early studies are showing actually in Petri dish studies, in lab studies, so these are not yet replicated on animals, much less humans, but showing retinal cell death with the LED lights from the virtual reality devices, yet they are on the market. So this is just, I use this as an example. Don't expect your governments to tell you what is safe and what is not safe, right? And I'm not saying this is happening in humans, I'm just saying it's happening in Petri dishes, so we should really, take note and act with precaution. That's the biggest thing, and I'm sure the other speakers have said this, we need to act with precaution. Go slowly, not fast. So socially, we're seeing speech delays. I talked about this, 1 in 3. We're seeing problems with social skills. Children need to observe their parents socializing. They need to socialize with each other and with their parents. When they don't, they're not going to develop social skills. It's so important. It is the one determinant that is going to ensure they are going to get a job, is their social skills. Employers don't like employees that can't socialize. We're seeing phobias, social phobias. I don't want to go out. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to grandma's. I don't want to be anywhere where there's other people. I don't feel comfortable. Really a lot of children are showing this. We're seeing more and more kids drop out of high school now. In Canada, it's a third by grade 10. And it's happening so fast that it's rarely even talked about. But what are they doing? They're at home and they're in their basements, of their parents doing now, nothing but media. Video games cause aggression. There is so much research. The gaming community will fight on this, but there's been, and I quote this meta-analysis by Craig Anderson, who looked at over 1,000 studies. 98% of them showed causal links between video games and aggression. So if you have a child who is aggressive, defiant, has explosive, violent tantrums, then we want to look to the gaming as a source of a problem. This is something I see clinically a lot in my younger kids who game, is where they're carrying the imagery of the game in their head. They're carrying the auditory in their head when they're not gaming. So I had a 9-year-old who was referred to me, and he threw a rock at a passing truck at the school, broke the window, and I said, "Who did you see? What did you see in the truck that made you do that?" And he saw zombies. So this is something, and he plays Halo Zombies all the time, right? This is now, I heard somebody call this an epidemic in the US, but mass shootings are where more than 4 people are killed. And so our school shootings are up and our community shootings are up, and this is something we're going to see more and more of. All shooters are gamers. And there's a website actually that profiles all the mass shootings and continues to profile mass shootings, and this is without a doubt one of our biggest problems. Porn. Our kids usually get into porn at age 6. If you give a child a device and you don't monitor the child on that device, they're curious. Of course they're going to get on porn. But this is an American study. By age 10, 42% are daily users. Porn is very addictive. It's more addictive than video games. It's more immersive. So it's something we really want to watch out for. Cyberbullying, we all know, is a huge problem. When kids have these devices in school, they are bullying on these devices. They're doing porn, they're playing video games on their cell phones, and it's very, very difficult to manage that. So I'm just going to flip forward to, I just want to talk a little bit about school and cognitive performance. So this is a study of 4-year-olds. The researchers showed them just 9 minutes of a fast-paced cartoon, and these kids scored 1 standard deviation lower on cognitive performance, memory, concentration. So this is something that the fast-paced media is really hard on the brain. It doesn't like to pay attention. And when we talk about, what we're doing in our schools with like what we call education technology, we really need to be very, very careful, because education technology producers are really trying to make the ed tech like video games, because they want to capture your attention. So if you have attention deficit, well, let's just make it faster for you, right? And that just feeds the attention deficit. It makes you more attention deficit, right? So we really have to be careful about what we're doing in school-based settings, especially when we're doing 1 iPad per child. So, we might be giving that iPad to a child who already has attention deficit. We might be giving that iPad to a child who has learning problems, developmental issues, social issues. That's usually who's getting the iPads. And so it's very important that we start, looking at what are we doing in the schools. And after break, my time's up right now, but after break, I want to go into how do we manage these devices, and especially in school-based settings, how do we create tech policies that are going to protect our children.